This time I'll call the January 21st, 2025 County Council meeting to order. Are our mics working? Yep, they're working now. At this time, I will recognize the Honorable Andy Litton from District 2 for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight, and please be with us. Help us to have guidance and wisdom to make the decisions needed to further the betterment of the county. Thank you for all the residents that have come out. Thank you for all the workers that are out doing the roads tonight with the bad weather. Just keep each one of us safe and healthy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everyone here tonight. We always enjoy seeing a good crowd come out and participate in county governance, especially even when it's snowing outside. So we'll see what happens with that, but it's exciting. Our first item under our agenda is oath of office. We have one individual who's going to be sworn in tonight, Mr. Tom Bach, Planning Commission in District 7. Mr. Bach, if you'll come forward and meet our county attorney at the front of the, he's making his way there. Yeah. Mr. Bach, we thank you for your service to the community. You do so without getting paid, and a lot of folks, you rarely get thanked for serving in that position too, but on behalf of the council, we want to thank you for your willingness to serve in that capacity. It's important that our citizens get involved in this, and we appreciate your service.
And I just want to make sure, that I thank you for serving. It's all your decision, and really appreciate it. I love serving on the board.
Thank you, sir.
Best of my ability.
Discharge the duties thereof.
Discharge the duties thereof.
And preserve, protect, and defend.
And preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of this state.
The Constitution of this state.
Of the United States.
And of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, you're on board.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We do have the pleasure of having a couple of very important appearances tonight. The first of which I will recognize Major Fred Moore, who will help us recognize Deputy Ray Feaster on his service and retirement with the York County Sheriff's Department.
All right, thank you, Council. It's my pleasure to recognize the retirement of Ray Feaster here after 33 years of service at the York County Sheriff's Office, 36 years as a law enforcement officer. Ray started Winthrop in 1989 and came over to York County in 1992. He has served as a patrol deputy, a sergeant, and his most recent assignment 16 or 17 years ago was his calling, which was an SRO school resource officer. He has made the big thing on many lives of children in this county. He is that big smile, that laugh that he has, and that voice, kids light up when they see him in the schools, and that's been his calling and his place to be. We've been very, very fortunate to have him representing numerous schools as an SRO. He's been recognized numerous times by several administrators and principals in that nature, letting us know how much of a good man they have in the school here. Very proud of him. When I spoke to him right before his date, January the 12th of his retirement, he came to my office. I said, Ray, tell me what you're going to do after. And the man he is, he said, he was born and raised in Chester, and he said, those schools down there, those kids need him. He's going to volunteer and mentor those kids down there. So they're going to get a good man to help them down in Chester County going forward. Ray, I'm going to tell you, brother, we're going to miss you. You have earned it, deserve it, your retirement. I think Sheriff Reed would like to say a few words too. Oh, wow.
I've known Ray over 30 years, and we worked together a solid 5 days, so I did know him 30 years. But the one thing about it is, from our time on the road, knowing him forever, the one thing that you would never see is him not smiling. And you spend 36 years in law enforcement, the one thing that everybody just hopes more than accolades or anything else is to truly make a difference. And I don't know one person that's made more of a difference in a lot of people's lives. And when you protect people's babies for 17 years, I don't think you can do anything more admirable than that. And I think it's a testament of who you are and how lucky the sheriff's office was to have you. I'm just honored to know that.
I give God all the glory, and I thank all our past sheriff and all our past sheriffs for the opportunity to serve your county. Thank you, y'all. Thank you.
Well, Deputy Feaster, I hate for you to go and sit down with your family. We would like you to come forward and get a picture with the council. If y'all don't mind making your way forward so we can make sure that we get a picture with the full council. Do want to say on behalf of the council, thank you so much for your 36 years of dedication to York County, and we certainly wish you the best as you move forward to do some really good work in Chester. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think we have some folks who want to make a comment.
I want to make a quick comment about Ray. I remember when we used to go out to the skate ring on the weekends. I know him from way back when. And you talk about protecting children. You know, imagine having 100 or 200 kids out at a skate ring, and a familiar face that was always there was Ray, along with some of the other deputies, to make sure the kids be in the kids' place and adults stayed in the adults' place. So that's one of my fondest memories. That's probably the first time I met Ray was when I was going out to the skating ring as probably a 9 or 10-year-old, and seeing him, I felt like I was growing up with Ray because he's not big in stature, as you can tell. So he was always about the same size as some of us other kids in there. So we felt like we had a friend, even though he was on the police force. So, but that's one of my fondest memories. And I've seen Ray throughout town, throughout the sheriff department, some of the private events and stuff that will be held throughout Rock Hill. He's always been there. Everybody knows him and respects him. And being in law enforcement, that's the one thing that those men and women fight for every single day is to respect. And I think Ray got the most respect when he came out to an event and when people seen him out in the community. So thank you, Ray. I just wanted to share that moment.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the work that you've done in our community and what you're going to do going forward, too. That's a big, important role. At this time, we also have the opportunity to recognize someone who's very close to this council, our Sheriff, Kevin Solson, our sheriff. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to come forward to present this.
I didn't think I had to dress up today. Let me say something real quick about Ray. Let me say something real quick about Ray. I've known Ray. I'm gonna pick on you, Ray. Prior to him coming to the sheriff's office, we worked at Carowinds together in security. But Ray had dual jobs. When there wasn't something going on in his area, they would post him at the lines at the major rides, and it said you had to be taller than Ray to ride. Like a little stick. But he got extra pay for it. Appreciate you, Ray. We go way back.
I gave Ray the opportunity to come up here and get him back, but to his credit, he's gonna let it fly. So one of the most important roles in our county is that of our sheriff. It's a critical position. It's one that the council works very closely with. And our county has been very blessed with strong leadership and dedication from our sheriff's department for many, many years. Tonight, we have the privilege to recognize Sheriff Tolson for his service to York County, which extends, including his years as deputy, 33 years. I didn't even realize. Okay, all right. The few months you took off to go to SLED. For those of you who don't know, Tolson is homegrown. He's a graduate of Northwestern before he went and got his criminal justice degree. And then he began his career as a patrolman with the York County Sheriff's Office in 1992. And for a short stint, he went to serve as a special agent for SLED. And then he returned back to his roots in York County to work as a special investigator with the Solicitor's Office, and actually formed the York County Multi-Jurisdictional Forensic Service Unit, which he served as the director from 2002 to 2009. In 2016, he was elected to serve as our sheriff, and he's served in that capacity for 8 years. Some folks may not realize during that time that he has served our county, he holds the distinct honor of being named Sheriff of the Year by the South Carolina Sheriff's Association, and that was done in 2019. He also served as the president of the Sheriff's Association in 2022. He has made tremendous accomplishments, and he has navigated some very difficult situations, including Detective Doty's death, which happened just a year after he took office. And he had to navigate COVID, which is one of those things that I don't think anyone can predict. As someone who's served in office on the administrative and the council side, that's a big deal to have to navigate that. In addition to his work as the sheriff, Kevin has served in many public service capacities. And you know what I love about it is that he served as Hunter Street Elementary School Improvement Council. Those are such important jobs. Those are jobs that impact our children. He also served with as a board member with York County United Way, served in various committees, including the campaign chair in 2014 and 15, and the Palmetto Leadership Chair in 2018 and 19. In 2018, Sheriff Tolson received United Way's Spirit of York County, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award. And when I talked about Sheriff Tolson coming before council, he said, no pomp and circumstance, don't want a whole lot, just say, hey. But I think those things are critically important to recognize all of the things that our county is blessed to have. Sheriff Tolson, we do appreciate the work that you and Beth have done, and we've gotten to see 2 of your children grow and blossom. And we certainly wish you the best. And on behalf of the county, we want to thank you for your service to York County, and we wish you the best in your future endeavors. We really do appreciate it. Now, on behalf of the council, we do have a clock, and you know what? We're gonna have to present you a better one because they didn't go all the way back. Apparently that little stint got left off, but we're gonna fix that.
Okay.
And then the one I love the most, and this is something that is done by our Public Works Department. They do this themselves, and they wanted to present you
Neat.
with your road.
Thank you.
Your road.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'll be very brief. Y'all have heard me in front of you, except for Councilman Litton. I got to tell you, Councilman, when I sat down in the back, I said, did Robert Winkler come back to the council? From afar, you sort of remind me of Robert. But I want to thank the council and thank the community for allowing me to serve. This council's been great to me and the sheriff's office. Anything major that I wanted to do, I got support from y'all, and that's so important for the office and for law enforcement. And I pray that that will continue. I really do. I love that office, and I don't want to see it not have the support of the council, which I don't think will happen. So that's really my only wish, and I thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Ken, do you mind coming up and getting a picture with the rest, with the council? Come up. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
That was funny.
Move now to our public forum session. This is an opportunity for folks to reach out to council and to speak for a couple of minutes without us interrupting you or asking questions. So some folks will get up here and they wonder, why didn't we interact? Well, the purpose of this is to listen, and so that's what we'll do. When I call your name, if you'll please give your name and address before you start speaking. If you'll kindly pay attention to the screen, it'll tell you when your time is getting closer, and then it'll tell you when your time is up. And if you will cut off your comments before I have to, that makes me feel a lot better about it. Our first individual is Ray Weber.
In keeping with the Ray theme, I'm Ray Weber, the chairman of the Lake Wiley Marine Commission, 4507 Water Oak Drive, Lake Wiley. Last fall, we were in front of this commission, and we talked about a new invasive species on Lake Wiley called Lingbia, and that was before Hurricane Helene. It was approximately 5 acres affected on the lake. Last week, the Lake Wiley Marine Commission, Lake Norman Marine Commission, and the Catawba Water Management Group sponsored a symposium to address this problem. Included were Charlotte Water, Riverkeeper, Duke, NC State, NC Wildlife, SCDNR, and some of the affected counties to determine a plan of action. The short version of this is the cost to treat Lingbia on our lake per county. The share for Lake Wiley is approximately $18,000 this year. Information has been sent to some of the commissioners. The Catawba Water Management Group will coordinate the billing, scheduling, updating the related parties. Duke will be providing in-kind services for monitoring and testing. Last year, the Lake Wiley Marine Commission spent out of our reserves $30,000, a little over $30,000 for treatment, April through September. Lingbia treatments will take at least 4 years, and they are. It's estimated that it'll be about 10 acres to treat, and that 10% cost increase over those 4 years. NC State and Duke Energy indicated that the treatment that we were using last year stopped the spread, but did not eradicate. The $30,000 that Lake Wiley Marine Commission spent last year came out of our reserves. Glad to discuss it, but I just wanted to get ahead of this before the budget session happened, and I apologize for not getting it on the agenda earlier.
Thank you, sir. Ashley Horn.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Horn, and I live at 4104 Bamborough Drive in Fort Mill. I'm here before you today to speak as a mother of 2 children that are zoned for the new schools located a few hundred feet from SOFAB, the heavy industrial plant that has inexplicably been allowed to be developed contrary to our zoning regulations. Although zoning may have nuances, the York County Zoning Code definition of what constitutes and doesn't constitute light industrial is clear. Light industrial does not include hazardous material treatment and storage facilities. SOFAB will store, use, and treat numerous hazardous materials in bulk quantity, including silane gas, hydrofluoric acid, and anhydrous ammonia. They will have their own wastewater treatment facility built on the property, and they'll have a scrubber stack that will emit fumes outside of the facility 24/7. This facility is a significant safety hazard the hundreds of children that will attend the Flint Hill schools, including my kids, as well as to the families who live nearby. It is blatantly obvious they do not belong on a light industrial zone property, and the unanimous decision by the BZA to overturn the administrator's decision proves that. This property has not been rezoned. You all, our elected officials, did not vote on the inconsistent use following public notice and readings. Our zoning ordinances have been ignored by county employees, as the council has also ignored the people of Fort Mill under the veil of ongoing litigation. There is still time to make this right. I insist this council demand county zoning abide by the law and represent and support the community that elected you. Please do what is right and defend the citizens of Fort Mill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sandy Brown.
My name's Sandy Brown, case number 2457. I'm at 972 Willis Farm Road, Clover, South Carolina, of course. As I asked before, I asked that you let my daughter build on my property. I wasn't interested in getting it rezoned to start with, so if there's some way that you could put us in the family exemption so that she could build and be able to finance her own land to have her home built, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Pam Massey.
Hi there, I'm Pam Massey, 5149 Sap Circle, and I'm here about case number 2459. Is everybody else here for Mr. Flowers? Stand up for our support. This is the rezoning of the property to light construction, is that correct? Yeah, and light industrial. So last meeting, it was brought up, a couple of things, that you had a house on a golf course that then they built condos or something in front of you. There's no one built around this yet. There's been approved, but, you know, once he's in there and people build there and they know what they're going to be looking at, they can make that decision whether or not they want to live there. Also, why not find another place on the lake, but why not this place? These are the people that are all living around there already, and we feel like this is something that's very, very needed in our area, and so we would like you to approve this for us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Katie Bessman. Okay. Lori Luck.
Hi, my name is Lori Lucky. I live at 5270 Bay Road. I came to speak about 2459 as well. I've been trying for several years to get dredging done. No company will do it because there is no ability to get the dirt off the lake. This is a really very needed business, so I'd like to voice my support. I wasn't able to make the first meeting. The problem is that there's many areas within the lake that are silting, and it's very important to maintain the quality of the lake to remove silt, as that is considered a pollution hazard to the lake. I think it would benefit all of York County if you allowed this business to operate at this location. I very much would request that you consider approving this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Bob Lucky. I got it right that time.
Got it, yep. My name is Bob Lucky. I live at 5270 Bay Road. Bought a house on the lake. Love being on the lake. We used to park our boat there. But because of the backup of the silt and the dirt and whatever, our boat would get stuck. We'd have to pull it out, and now we have it at a marina. And I'd much rather have my boat there because I paid the money to live on the lake, to enjoy the lake. I want to get out and just hop on my boat and go instead of having to drive to a marina to get into my boat. Now, I also understand that this work isn't a one-time thing. It's going to happen repeatedly for us. It's going to build over the years, and it's maybe every 10 years we might have to dredge to maintain the depth of the lake so people can move their boats in and out. And we're not the only family affected by this. Everyone along that canal that empties into Lake Wylie will be affected. And we do need to get this opportunity to get somebody in there to help take care of the dredging work. All I really have to say. I want my boat at my house. I want to enjoy the lake for what it's worth instead of making a 10-minute drive. Now, that's not a bad drive to get to the marina, but there's other people that might have to drive further or may not even want to live out there. And it's very nice to live there. It's quiet. And we can go out onto the lake and enjoy it, but I can't right now because I don't control the depth of the lake, and I can't handle the dredging or the dirt that piles in. It just happens over time, and I'm more than happy to pay the money to get it dredged when I need it dredged. I want to enjoy the lake for what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our public forum session. We do appreciate the community coming out and expressing their concerns before council. Do we have a motion on consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. We move now to our first public hearing item, which is found on page 11 of the council agenda. First item, council to hold a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 155 zoning code section 155.898, parking and storage of vehicles in the cultural, residential, and urban development districts to allow for tractor-trailer trucks and associated travel containers to be stored outdoors for use in a bona fide farming operations, to provide for a public hearing and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Hi, greetings. My name's Rick Abood. I'm the principal planner. I've met some of you and some of you haven't, so I want to get that out of the way. And we have been working on a text amendment. This kind of a bounce back from you in August. We received some direction to go ahead and take this to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it became, out of what I got up here, had a code enforcement case, and that's about the use of tractor trailers. This particular issue was the storage or parking of tractor trailers in agricultural land. And after going through the Planning and Zoning Committee, we gave them a whole buffet of options of how you might be able to deal with tractor trailers. And after reviewing all the options we had, they came out with 3 principles they wanted to follow. One of them was the vehicles and equipment may be stored for agricultural purposes only, and they're essential to the operation, and we have a bona fide farming operation on the land. And the third one's the vehicles are to be owned or leased by the owner or the tenant of the property where the agricultural activity is happening. And this is to kind of stop from parking lots being made or storage operation for tractor trailers. Sure, they're all being used in a farming operation. But we did come up with this proposed amendment, which have the 3 pillars that I went over, and we have citations from our economic development sections of the comp plan and the growth section, the goals, and economic opportunity goals that it fulfills. And it's in the range of planning and design best practices, and it's not contrary to the public safety and general welfare. Your Planning Commission did vote unanimously to support the amendment and recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
Yeah.
Mr. Roddy?
So I've had some experience with businesses wanting to use tractor trailers as storage pieces on their property. Are we going to address that in any way? Because if we're allowing it to be done in AGC for farming sake on that level, next you're going to get businesses to say, hey, I was told I couldn't have a tractor trailer for my storage, but you're allowing it to go in a residential area to assist with agriculture uses. So are we prepared to deal with that as well?
I think for purposes of, I had some conversations with other council prior to this meeting. I think for purposes of keeping our council focused on what's in front of the council currently now, what was sent to committee and what was reviewed was basically to address an issue with the agriculture area. I think if council wants to have something broader done, I think we probably need to bring that up through our regular process. But I think at this point, unfortunately, I see this too. I see questions that arise when you look at the full ordinance, and I know it went before the planning and zoning, and y'all had an opportunity to see that. I think at this point, there are violations that are occurring that brought this to council's attention, and so trying to address that and us focusing on this issue, I think is the way that the process works here now. But I note that consideration.
And that was my next question I wrote down. Did staff recognize this issue, or were there complaints? And
I think maybe
This was a specific charge to the Planning and Zoning Committee based on complaints that we received.
I think one of the things that would be helpful is for staff to be mindful of this and to alert council to, sometimes we don't hear the complaints. We do hear them in this one, and this was certainly something that was not intended by council to infringe upon the farmers' rights to use the property to do farming initiatives. Are there any questions of staff as it pertains to this particular change with the code?
Yes, please. Rick, in the staff report, when you look at 155.898 and everything that's listed that you have to comply with, I understand the red line that is suggested, but does all this still apply? The 25-foot setback, the 10-foot setback, the enclosure, garage?
Not for this particular subject of the tractor trailers and ag, no.
Okay, all right. So the current regulation, we don't have to be concerned with any of this language in the current regulation?
Not as it applies to tractor trailers.
Okay, so the ownership, store within completely enclosed and roof structures, parked in the rear, 25 feet from the rear property line, 10 feet from the side, that all doesn't apply?
Not for this particular specific issue of tractor trailers used in agricultural purposes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have just one question. The image of the storage of those trailers, I can see it better now. I was going to say, was that from the road, or did you have to look harder for them?
You had to get a particular angle. If you move up and down the street, you'd be shaded by the tree. You wouldn't see it through the trees.
So you had to look for them, though?
Yeah, you kind of have to get an
Okay.
angle at the intersection.
Yeah, typically, they parked them where they were pretty much out of sight. They were loading them as they were baling the straw from combining.
So based on where this is located, so the picture we're seeing though, is this on AGC right now, or is this on, okay, just, it is sitting on AGC.
And I do agree, there are some others. I mean, this is just one issue, but I do agree there's other places we do need to address some questions on this, but it's real critical that farmers be able to get critical stuff that can't get wet, you know, the market and all.
Yeah. One other clarification, please, just to make sure they understand. So 1 acre doesn't matter, 5 acres doesn't matter, 10 acres doesn't matter. What we have written here is what applies
Yes.
with the red line. Okay, thank you.
And just I want to add that this was the only complaint I've seen about this issue. It's not like we had multiple, and I wouldn't expect this to become a much larger issue even with the code change.
I think from the farmer, I received a number of calls, and I believe that other council members did, when it came to a lot of folks don't realize that there are restrictions now that impinge on agriculture, and I think a lot of folks don't complain, but as some residents, I think this arose from a complaint that pointed out an issue here where that occurred. One question that I have in the draft text amendment, it appears that we have two conditions, whereas before it wasn't there. It says, basically, the problem was the fact that these trailers had wheels on them and that the conifer containers were not allowed in AG. I guess that's my question is, are these containers allowed on AGC parcels that are conducting farming? And is there a limitation currently under the code?
Not for the use of tractor trailers. The Connex are shipping containers. There's separate regulations for them. I believe may be able to have like 3 of those. That's not specifically addressed. It's about tractor trailers and.
So we actually, in our code, we have 2 separate areas for the container versus the ones that are on the wheels.
Yes, there's section code.
I think part of the concern is that we kind of treat AGC and farming, especially bona fide farming operations, the same as we do anything else. And that, as a county that has its history in AGC, that's part of the concern, is that this is split up so much in the code. So as I understand it, is there, just this piggybacks on Mr. Huckabee's question, I guess a farming operation that needs this to be able to store the produce or whatever it is their product is, are they limited in the number that they need? If they need to have them, are they limited currently under the code?
No.
Okay, but they would be limited under if it was a container that didn't have wheels?
It was a shipping container only, yes.
So what's the shipping container limitation?
I believe it's 3 without looking at the code,
Oh,
but.
wow, okay. Well, I mean, one of the things that we've focused on is trying to focus on our AGC areas and giving them the flexibility to do their job. My concern is, and I think one that's been brought up by council is, sometimes we don't know unless a complaint is brought up as to where an issue happens, but I think they're probably tied together. Another question I have is, we change it to say that it has to be, vehicles and equipment are essential to and active in the use of farming operations, and then we add on top of that, the vehicles have to be owned, leased, or rented to the owner. Is there a reason why we need both of them? Because I would think if they're required or for you, I'm not a farmer. I don't, in terms of how the sense is truly used when doing the product and selling that. Do we know, do they sometimes lease to are we being too restrictive there? Because I think if number 1 could basically say it's limited to farming use, do we have to also say that they have to own, lease, or rent it? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, that's there kind of as a guardrail against somebody collecting somebody else's tractor trailers. You know, maybe those, you know, it just, they should be used in the operation of that particular instance and not collected on somebody else's property, so you don't end up with a field of trucks that are maybe used in different operations.
Any other questions for staff before we open public hearing?
Yeah, I have one other question though. So in times of operation, you know, as Tommy was saying, the value of having a closed container is critical, especially if it's moisture, et cetera. But there's only certain times of year as you are going to be utilizing these. What protections are in place where if people don't see any activity around these trailers, there may be an indication of just somebody storing trailers there as opposed to storing and utilizing these trailers. I just want to make sure when we're supporting something along these lines, we're also protecting them from future complaints, because they're not going to use them, you know, only certain times a year based on what the needs are. So I guess I want to make sure there are some protections in there on AGC for future concerns about, you know, the amount of times they use those trailers, I guess.
Yeah, it would be fine, just so they're on property that's, you know, being actively farmed. You know, there's some tells on that. If you see a property that's fallow and nobody's doing anything, you really probably wouldn't think you have any business with the trucks there, but it should be pretty easy. You're on an active.
Okay. Yeah, again, it makes all the sense in the world, right?
Yeah, we don't have, there's no exclusions for the time of year that they have to be there or anything.
Right.
It's understood. And that's exactly what's happening here. These aren't being used. They're just waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one third clarification, just to make sure, because, so the current regulation says that they really shouldn't be in sight. So they're behind your residence, the 25-foot, the 10-foot. But what we would pass here, they could be right out on the road if they wanted to be, right? Yeah.
Yep, have to be on the property, exactly.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff before we open public hearing?
But I will say, those trailers are loaded. They keep straw, and they're constantly refurbishing as Lowe's, Home Depot, different ones request.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this change? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second?
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's all right, Mr. Litton? Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
On the change?
So, as Councilman Roddy said earlier, I really think this thing should be looked at in greater detail, just so that we make sure that all residents of the county get the opportunity to have the same use, not just for the farming, but for any usage, and more based on the lot sizes or setbacks instead of just farming.
Any other discussion?
I'll just say, I think if we just do it for this, we just need to be prepared to address it for the other end of the spectrum versus, let's just try to cover as much ground as we can while we got it open to go ahead and try to get something in place. But I'm going to support it because I was contacted by several people who utilize it for these options for their business. In the farming. So I have no problem with it, but I think we need to tighten up on it and address other businesses who want to utilize tractor trailer storages.
Yeah.
I just would say, I'm in favor of this. I think the intent's there, but I think what we're overlooking is the unintentional consequences of approving this and overlooking what all was in the regulation before. And we may be finding ourselves discussing this again down the road. And I won't give examples, but that's my concern.
So I would say the Planning and Zoning Committee reviewed this. Staff brought all the options forward to the committee. This was their recommendation. It went to the Planning Commission. It's coming back to y'all. If you want to increase the scope, we talked about this the other night, I would encourage a new charge to the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Right.
Yes.
So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think, and again, I think this is an example of being specific in our ask. We came back, we went to the planning committee specifically to address for ag. I think this, to me, is a good solution, and it's very specific, and I think that we accomplish, if we're focused in on the item that we're shooting for, I think we have to be, in order to cross the finish line, sometimes we got to be very specific, and I think that this is an example of being very specific, and the language here, I think, supports what we're trying to accomplish. And again, I'm going to support it tonight. Yeah.
Any other discussion?
No, I'm willing to be open. I want to get this particular situation solved, and I'm more than welcome for us talking, because I do think other businesses should have the option. But, y'all know me, I'm not shallow at all, and I don't want to take anybody's rights away.
All right. I certainly support this change, and it's one of those things where if you take a microscope to something and you take a look at something, you see a lot of things that maybe you would change outside of that. One of the things I guess we're relying on staff especially to do is to let us know when these complaints arise or when there's a violation. It's critically important to us because I know as a council, it's important to us to respect the historic nature of our agriculture, but also to address complaints when they arise, especially if there are other businesses experiencing this. We need to hear what those complaints are so that we know when to take that action. Sometimes that's a better indicator of where there's a need because there's a lot of other changes that council's undertaking too. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move down to our second public hearing item. Council to hold a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 154, Land Development Code, Section 154.365, approval criteria to clarify the level of service for the different types of street classifications, to modify the required minimum level of service specifically for egress movements, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Mr. Bono.
Ma'am. So this is a little technical, so please bear with me. The background on this text amendment, the Planning and Zoning Committee discussed this item back in October to talk about potential amendments to the TIA section of our Land Development Code, specifically addressing one type of movement, and that's egress movements or leaving a site into the main thoroughfare. Staff had received feedback from some traffic engineers that the county's TIA requirements specific to that movement in particular are too stringent. So the focus of the proposed amendment is two-faceted. The first being to reorganize the section a little bit to make it more clear what the purpose is and to identify very quickly what the different levels of service required are. And the second being to have a slight reduction in level of service for those egress movements. So here's what that current regulation looks like today. As you can see, it's kind of a big block of text. And that's really hard to decipher. It takes a couple readings. So you'll see with the proposed amendment reorganizes that just a little bit to make it more clear, easier to read in fulfillment of the strategic plan goals to make the code a little more user-friendly. And here is a chart of what we're talking about with level of service criteria. So what we're talking about is how long do you have to sit and wait before you make your desired movement when you're at an intersection, whether you're leaving a site in this case, or looking to go through a light, through an intersection, any of the various movements that you might take. So when we talk about level of service A at a signalized intersection with a traffic light, we're talking about anything less than 10 seconds would be a level of service A. And the other extreme, level of service F at that same light, if you're waiting any more than 80 seconds, that would be a level of service F. So really, we're just talking about how long are you waiting to make your desired movement, and that's what level of service is all about. So here's what that proposed amendment looks like. The new language is in that subparagraph C. Everything else is existing language. It's just reorganized to make it quicker. You can identify what's required for level of service D and C for major streets and minor streets. And so that third paragraph, level of service E, or potentially F for existing egress points is what's new. So I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. So for new developments, the proposal is to reduce the level of service for site egress movements from D to E. And if you look at the table, that really gets into what we are trying to accomplish and how that translates into seconds. So if you are at a signalized intersection, there's a traffic light, a level of service D, you can wait up to 55 seconds, and level of service E be up to 80. So it's really a maximum difference of a 25-second delay, and at an unsignalized, that would be a maximum difference of 15, could be less than that. But what's important to remember with this is it's an internal delay. So we're not talking you're on your 160 and you're at a light and development's going in and now I'm waiting 25 seconds more at the light to continue, not using that site at all. We're talking about leaving a site to go into the main thoroughfare. So all the delay is waiting to leave your shopping trip, going to the dentist, whatever your trip might be, to get back into the main thoroughfare. The proposal for the existing developments, so would be to reduce the level of service to potentially F from D if the increased delay is not more than 25% of the existing delay. That's a little bit complex, but here's that level of service F, where it's more than 80 seconds at a light and more than 50 seconds when there's no light at that intersection, that egress movement. So the example is if you have a level of service that says you're waiting 60 seconds, a full minute to leave a site, you're already at level of service F. And maybe there's an out parcel that hasn't been developed yet, it's vacant land, the property owner would like to develop that. Well, under our ordinance, unless they correct that failing egress movement, they can't develop at all. So this amendment would allow them to have that internal delay increase up to 75 seconds from 60. So that's an example of how that would work. And again, that's for an existing development that maybe has an undeveloped out parcel. So here's an example, a little more visual of how that new development might work. This is an example from Highway 160. There's a site that came in and the TIA reported they've got a failing egress movement, making a left egress movement during the PM peak only. So that means that during the AM peak and all other times aside from the PM peak, that left turn movement met the level of service. The TIA recommendation to correct that and allow the project to move forward is just to remove the left turn movement altogether. So right in, right out only on 160. So anyone looking to go north on this site, leaving this site, couldn't do that at any time ever, never mind during the peak. This amendment, based on how close they were to the level of service, would allow for the full access to remain at this particular location. So that gives the drivers that are leaving this site, especially if they have an option to turn left and an option to turn right, and we're not having just one lane, one egress lane where the left movement is delaying everybody, gives them some options. So if there is an opportunity to make a left, say we're off peak, we're on the weekend, they can do that. Or if it is PM peak and it's heavily congested, they can wait there 75 seconds, their 90 seconds, their 150 seconds, however long it might take to make that movement safely, or they can go right and make an adjustment and adjust their trip accordingly. Here's an example of an existing development. This is the Tractor Supply out on Charlotte Highway. So when this project came in, that Tractor Supply was operating at level of service D, so it passes, but just barely. So any of the adjacent parcels that are outlined in yellow, which are likely to use that existing egress on the Tractor Supply onto Charlotte Highway. You can see there's some stub outs designed for that very purpose. Any development would likely cause that egress movement to fail, and the project couldn't move forward unless they found some mitigation options for that egress movement. And so this amendment would allow for some slight relief to allow those movements to continue and for this parcel to be developed. Staff recommends approval. It furthers a couple of goals, certainly from the comp plan to keep development and redevelopment of sites to areas that have the thoroughfare capacity to handle them rather than pushing them further and further out into more rural areas. And it implements a couple of the strategic plan goals and specifically to proactively find solutions to issues with code. So this amendment is within the range of planning and design best practices. A lot of jurisdictions do their TIAs differently, and it gets very technical very quickly, but this is within the range of reasonable outcomes. And this amendment is not contrary to public health, safety, and general welfare. And I do want to emphasize that any additional delay that might be enacted by this amendment would be internal and not on the main thoroughfare. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, so Jonathan, as you went through this, so a couple things come to mind. You know, we look at developments that have gone in the past where DOT did not approve a light at an intersection, or they felt like the calibration between lights, there's too many lights, so there's too much stopping, and there's a calculation where they feel like there's going to be a lot of rear-end accidents, et cetera. So when you looked at this design, is this bearing the fact that we've already gotten pre-approval from DOT to actually put a light into a certain area, and is that already been factored into decision A? And then the other piece of this is some of our existing lights, they don't utilize the full functionality of a stoplight, right? Sometimes they'll have left-hand switches that have not been turned on yet, and it's based on a traffic study of future traffic going through there. So how are we calibrating this measurement up against the requirements of DOT for lighting purposes?
Yeah, so this amendment doesn't force or examine signal intersections specifically, and most of the time, we're talking about a commercial site that is unsignalized egress movement. So they're just looking to exit a commercial development to get onto a major road. So most often, they're not going to be signalized, but you might have in the future, maybe there is sufficient development. So say there is not enough development to warrant a light per SCDOT's highway guidelines. But once some vacant parcels get developed, now there's enough trips that are feeding one particular egress movement that maybe it does warrant lights that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So yeah, it's very site-specific, but most of the time, we're talking about unsignalized egress movement.
Okay, yeah, because we've got a situation where we finally did drive DOT in order to get a light into a situation, which was but at the end of the day, there was always that question of why wasn't it there before, and as they've done the planning design of it, there's been discussions overall, so I appreciate this conversation. Yeah.
Any other questions for staff?
Are we being overly restrictive with this requirement? Looking through your other jurisdictions and what other places are doing, nobody else really regulates egress from commercial districts like this, from parking lots and whatnot. I mean, should we maybe look at not doing that to be kind of similar to them? Because it seems like it's causing some issues possibly, but like you said, it's coming out of a parking lot or commercial area. Does it really matter how long you sit there? Like you.
Yeah, that's a good question, and certainly within council's purview to take a look at getting rid of analyzing egress movements altogether. I will say that there is some value in the safety factor, because if you don't have any sort of limit on egress movements, eventually someone's going to make a risky move, right? So there's benefit in having some limitation. So it is a trade-off, like most everything else in code.
I guess I'll ask one quick question. On 274, you noted the Tractor Supply. Are we not looking at 274 as an example to prevent what happened on 49 and encourage secondary roads behind these properties? So you're taking it to one stoplight instead of having all these curb cuts?
So and that's a good design in concept. The problem with that is you're relying on developers to build that secondary road unless the county is going to proactively go up and down Charlotte Highway and build those on its own dime or taxpayer dime. And most of the time, these developers are coming 1 or 2 or 3 parcels at a time, and having that frontage road that comes off of the highway isn't really feasible to put in, because they'd essentially have one that comes off the highway just to access one lot. If you had it along the entire highway where people can get off and all that through traffic can keep moving and no one's impacted by a car slowing down and a bunch of them making a lot of egress movements, then it makes a lot of sense. But 1 or 2 sites at a time as currently being developed isn't really feasible for individual developers.
Kind of leads us down the conversation of adequate public facilities again. Start collecting that money now so you can put proper infrastructure in place to keep the traffic moving and not stalling the traffic.
Was this request, or was this change, was it the Tractor Supply that brought staff's attention to this, or are there other current examples that exist that we're dealing with?
No, it's just a general complaint we've heard from traffic engineers a number of times over several years.
So it's a number. Is there any way to gauge how many it is, or what
We
it's
probably
causing?
hear that complaint specific, because if an egress works in the TIA analysis, nobody's going to complain about it. But for those sites, particularly on our heavily trafficked thoroughfares like 160 and Charlotte Highway, where there is a lot of existing traffic on the road already, so any egress movement is going to be difficult, particularly that making a left. So those are the projects that we hear about the most. And some of them solve it by just doing a right in, right out, and then that solves their problem for a left egress movement. But there are situations in which it would be appropriate most of the time to make that left movement.
So it looks like the Planning and Zoning Committee, this came before them prior to this year. They looked at it, and it went before the Planning Commission, I can't tell, in December?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to old business. Item number 1, rezoning action. Consider second reading, case number 24-52, tax map number 46400000019 to rezone from AGC to RUD, 3.02 acre parcel in District 2. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 6-1. Move now to item number 2, rezoning action. Consider second reading, case number 24-57, tax map number 257000008 to rezone from AGC to RUD, a 7-acre parcel in District 3. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Yeah. I made the motion to approve here, but I still go back to what I said the last time. This, partial land, 7 acres, and it's, totally family. And I would like for our discussion on the ag and RUD and family exemption to get underway kind of quick like, because this was a right that was took away.
Is there any other discussion?
I just wanted to go back to say if it was a right that was, have we ever had a family exemption in any of our ordinances?
There is a family exemption, and Jonathan, if you want to share what it is, I don't know if it would apply in this situation.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a family exemption in the Land Development Code for when you are creating a new lot that essentially gives you a variance from the frontage requirement. So normally you need to have frontage on a public road, and the family exemption allows you to not have road frontage. So you'll see in GIS sometimes people have a little square of property entirely surrounded by the parent parcel. That's a common strategy, or they'll be stacked and have a shared driveway, or there'll be a lot further behind. That's the family exemption. It's been in code for quite some time.
But it's a family exemption on road frontage,
Road
not
frontage,
family exemption
not on lot
allowing
size, correct.
additional properties to be built.
That's right.
Because I think in that case, are we using that loosely to say family exemption when it applies to road frontage?
So I think what Councilmember Atkins is referring to is y'all have asked us to look at family exemptions in general as part of our AGC project, which we already have started, so we are working on it.
Yeah. Plus, you could have 2 dwellings and an accessory dwelling.
Yeah, well, that was under my understanding that you had, that you wouldn't be subdividing the property, but you had an ability to build another unit from within that same property. Jonathan, isn't that, I
Without
thought that
redefining
was,
the property line.
Right, you're not subdividing it, but you're actually building another unit from within that same property.
So the request of this applicant is to have a subdivision of property.
No, but I'm saying under the, and I think Tommy's referring to this, is the fact that there was an opportunity for somebody to actually build something, not subdividing it, in the past where they can add a second home onto that property, under that same property, if it's a family member.
Yes, sir, you're referring to the difference between the 10-acre requirement that's current and there was no acreage requirement previously. That is in the rural zoning project, but not necessarily associated with this rezoning request.
But I do think there was a family exemption prior to 2019 that allowed any parcels that were 5-acre lots, and we're going to have the opportunity to take a look at one that's in another district tonight. But previously, we allowed 5-acre lots to serve as an AGC lot, and we also allowed 2 primary dwellings plus an accessory unit on that lot at the same time.
Yeah, that.
We also allowed special exceptions to go through. So family-owned parcels, these actually they would go before the ZBA to allow 1-acre lots to be carved off from the family to be able to do that. That's why we have so many of the 1-acre lots. I think it's not very fruitful for us to have the discussion about what was the past necessarily, although I am very much going to be a stronghold to us reinstituting rights that existed before, especially to property owners and parcel owners who owned parcels before 2019. I am personally going to advocate for that because I think that that's what families who own the properties for a long period of time bought the properties based upon the understanding of what the parcel allowances were. However, for purposes of tonight, and just to keep this moving forward, I think the question is simply for us to, we have referred this to a committee to take a look at AGC and compatibility of large lot developments that are compatible with AGC, and that's something that we're going to have to fix prospectively. We're not going to be able to fix it retroactively. But I think for purposes of today, the motion on the table is to consider whether or not to allow a 7-acre parcel to potentially allow 2 homes on 7 acres, which would make them 3.5-acre lot parcels. Is there any other discussion before we vote?
Yes, please. So it sounds to me there are 4 of us that feel like in the future, we may change the wording of the ordinance that would allow two homes on separate parcels on this property. Therefore, assuming that's the case, there are 4 of us that will vote in favor of what you all just brought up a minute ago, which I agree with. To me, it doesn't make sense to approve this to RUD because then this whole area could go from AGC to RUD, which I don't think is what you're after.
Well, and just because it's important to me to make sure that council's operating under factual circumstances, and I'm going to ask legal this. So that there's been this thought process, and one of the questions is when we look at our comp plan, I think council has been under the impression that if we allow any parcel to go from AGC to RUD, that somehow that obligates us to do it with any future parcel. And so once again, I do want to make sure that I get an opinion from legal and from staff. Does any specific decision then require a subsequent decision that we do the same thing anywhere in that area?
Happy to flesh that out in written form, but as rezonings are legislatively enacted and in the grace of council, it's not mandated. But there's certainly an argument to make. But happy to spell that out in greater detail in written form.
Okay. Is there any other discussion before we vote?
Yeah. I still think we're using the term, when we talk about prior to a family being able to have 2 primary homes, yes, but it didn't call for splitting or redefining property lines. You could build another dwelling on there without having to come and redraw property lines. And I understand why people want to redraw the property lines, because now that property sits alone. You can go to a bank, you can get a loan on it, but if you are building it without redefining the property lines, now you're going to tap the whole family piece of property with an existing house, with the land, just to get a loan to build the second home. we have an ordinance, or we have a mechanism that allowed that to happen, but we were in my opinion, we were putting families in harm's way because they had to leverage or put up the family house, the original house, and the land as collateral to borrow the money to build the second. And if something happened, the bank came and got it all. Now families are coming saying, hey, you took away my right to build the second home. I need to split it off. It's a good thing to split it because now we're not allowing families to be at risk of losing everything if they can't pay the mortgage on the new, what they borrowed. So we had a system that, yeah, it allowed 2 homes to go on there, but at the same time, we were creating a situation that if they didn't make the payment, the bank was gonna own it all. And if there ever came a time that they wanted to sell one of those, they had to come back and get it broke off to its own property line, because you can't sell one piece of property if it's all under one plat. So now we're starting to see different families come back and say, hey, I want to sell this piece of property. And the very next one that's in my district, I think that's a similar case, where 2 homes were allowed to be put on one piece of property without distinct property lines for each one. The very next one that we're about to discuss is coming to say, hey, I need a defined property line so that I can either go to the bank and get money to borrow to fix it up, or I can put it on the market to sell, because I can't sell it if it's all on one piece. So I think sometimes we try to do a good deed with allowing something, but it creates collateral situations, and we have to be mindful when we make these changes, how it works in the real world. What are we gonna come back and see? And I think this very next one that's in my district is facing that similar situation.
Well,
Any other discussion?
I agree with you, but, and that's why I want us to have this discussion. But it's something wrong, especially when you've got families on ag land with at least 3 children, if not 5. I mean, it should be a matter of, if every time a child that lives on agricultural land, the parent wants to give them the land, I've said it and said it, and the parents want them to live there on that property, that their only option is to go to RUD, then we might as well not have ag land. Everything ought to be in RUD, and you just have ag exempted RUD. I mean, it's contradictory. I mean, and then the builders and all you gotta get is a little touch, to your point, Watts, and then we've opened up the whole gap
So that's
for
why,
that.
that's kind of why
So
I'm saying,
we're not protecting farmland.
I'm saying if we wait 5 or 6 months, we may, it sounds like there are 4 people on here that are in favor of accomplishing
And that's
what you
why I
want to
want to get
accomplish.
it on the way. But this particular case here, I mean, this woman wants this child is going to inherit this land, regardless of what. I mean, she should have had the accessory dwelling. I mean,
The
Well,
applicant
I
is
think,
asked to subdivide
I
the
think for
lot.
purposes of what we have in front of us today, I mean, the issue before us is, and council just passed 6-1, allowing an individual to put a home on 2 homes on 3 acres. For folks to then say 7 is not enough, I think that's a problem. I think what council is trying to do and accomplish with what is going on with our future RUD land, we've got to figure that out. But we're stuck here today with folks that are asking us to be able to use their property in a way, and I think council's got to make the decision, and that decision does not require us to make the decision to everybody that's right next to it. And that's the part that I think is important for council to understand. And so we do have a lot of work in front of us to figure out how to fix this going forward, but we have to deal with the issues that are coming in front of us. And so the motion in front of us currently is the motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 6-1. We move now to item number 3, rezoning action. Consider second reading case number 24-58, tax map number 52900000061, to rezone from AGC to RUD, a 5.2 acre parcel in District 4. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Yes, I do want to explain, because I want to explain why I'm going to vote yes to this. 2 parcels away, there are 10 separate parcels that are zoned the category that we're about to rezone this to if it gets approved. A little different than the last one. And this is the reverse of what you just said. There's no RUD next to this AGC. It's 2 parcels away, but now you can make the argument for approving this because you got 10 parcels to the right of this, right? And so that's the argument that I was making a minute ago, that if that passes at RUD, then if you got the parcel right beside it, it's going to be kind of hard for us to say no when you just approve, yeah, to the next one. That was my point. And 5 or 6 months from now, it'll be in their favor and they could do it anyway, by right. Anyway, I'm just explaining why I'm voting yes to this.
Any other discussion? I think in this particular case, I did ask some questions. I think it's important to make sure that I want to ask these questions of staff. As I understand it, this was part of a platted subdivision that had, I believe, 37 units. I don't have the application in front of me, 37 units. And all of those parcels were 5 acres or more at the time. Is that right?
Yes, so it was a plat that did not need to go to Planning Commission because it utilized 2 existing roads. There were 37 original lots, some of which have been rezoned and made smaller, but originally they
Right,
all
but
were 5
when the
acres.
lots were originally sold, all of the lots were 5 acres or
At least,
more?
yes.
Okay. As I understand it, there were 2 parcels. None of these, I think what's interesting is that the prior one, there were comments about there being RUD nearby. Well, actually, there's RUD nearby, there's none adjacent, which is the same situation in the one just before, but not in this one. So I do think, on some level, we've got to somehow be consistent in how we report these things. The concern that I had on this one, and to me, it just points out the issue that we have, and that is that when these folks bought these lots as part of a subdivision, they thought all their neighbors were required to have at least 5 acres. That, to me, sets this one apart a little bit, and I do think that what concerns me a little bit is that council has put on the comprehensive plan what they thought was rural living, and apparently the way that's being interpreted is that rural living means 1 acre. So basically, what I'm hearing is that staff's report, that staff would be comfortable and staff would recommend a rezoning for any of these parcels to 1 acres in that area, even though these parcels are 5 acre lots that were sold. Now, we can't undo what's been done in the past. So for instance, this particular parcel, there were 2 individual homes that were allowed on this site. And fortunately enough, this parcel is a little bit different because it fronts 2 roads, which gives it some flexibility that other parcels aren't given. And I certainly am sensitive to families owning property and being able to do that. So I'm going to support this tonight but I do think council needs to think broadly about this, because what I don't think is what council intended to do when we passed the comp plan is to say all of that property now, anybody's allowed to do 1 acre lots. Because what that would mean is that those 5 acre lots are now open to, if somebody has a way to split it up to do 5 acre lots, when these people bought this property being 5 acre parcels. So, I mean, all of these things require a little bit more looking at, and this just makes that, the questions that we have to answer when we address this rural zoning it just makes that more important. How do we ensure that the family exemptions that were in place that did allow folks to carve it out on a road that family owned that land, how do we preserve that? How do we allow families to have some flexibility? Because to me, that's what true affordable housing is. The true affordable housing isn't going out and giving Section 8 housing. It's being able to allow folks to use their land in a way they need to, but also making sure that we stand by a plan that we've given to folks. Because I've already gotten a call from some of the folks that live in that neighborhood in those platted subdivisions who are a little bit concerned. So now are we going to allow everybody else in those platted subdivisions to come in and split their properties up for 2 acres or for 1 acre lots.
Well, what I would do is I'd point to the comp plan and the definition of rural residential. So if we don't agree with the comp plan, then we need y'all's insight to
I think
update the comp plan.
we need council
But-
to understand
But
that.
the comp plan says 1 acre or more. That's what the comp plan says.
Greater than
That's-
1 acre
That's why we
is consistent
included
with
that in the
AGC.
follow-up report of what rural residential
I think my
is.
point is that when the comp plan was originally passed, it was prior to these changes that were made in RECODE and to the family exemption. So the timing of it is a little bit off. The opportunity for us to have that discussion as a council to make sure that we end up in a place that gives our community some comfortability that we're sticking to our plan, but also that allows us to revise this in a way that makes it apply across the board.
I'll just go on record and say this is a very complex situation that we're gonna be dealing with all across this county. Because if we can't have it both ways to say, hey, yeah, you should be able to do what you wanna do with your property on this hand and allow a family to come in and say, yeah, I wanna split this with my kids. Okay? Split the 7-acre tract to two tracts, and Tommy says, yeah, he should be able to give his kids part of his land. Well, it started out a bigger piece of land, and if you want to give 1 acre to this son, 1 acre to this daughter, and then we have a situation like this, the rules before today allow this family to put 2 homes on 1 tract of land. Now, something is going on that they feel the need that they gotta have them separate. But if we didn't allow the 2 to be put on the 1 acre tract, the 1 parcel tract years ago, we wouldn't be faced with this. It'd only be 1 house there. So, like I said, we're creating a situation that we're gonna have to deal with down the road. And it's hard to say yes to one family to go in and build another house and split that land. And it's hard for us now to turn around and tell that family, no, we're not gonna allow you to establish another property line, because the house is already there with this one. And like Chairman Cox said, this faces 2 different roads, so it's not gonna be that big of a grave detriment to this area. But then to point out, you know, couple lots over, you have smaller lots. So they're all not 5-acre tracts in this area. Some have been broken down. But it does lend itself to me to come in and say, well, you let Watts have smaller acreage to put additional houses on. How can you tell me no? I'm 2 houses over, 3 tracts over. So we're allowing people to use these different arguments to come, basically use your words against you. And that's what they're gonna do down the road. So we have to be prepared to either say, continue to say yes, or start saying no. But there are gonna be more and more people filing for applications to rezone from AGC to RUD, because it gives them more options to put more houses. It allows that element of, now I don't have to have my son go out and purchase a 50,000 acre tract to put a house. That's an instant savings off what they gotta spend to build a house. I can't tell that family no. I couldn't tell this lady no. She couldn't give her daughter a piece of land to put her house. If we said no, that daughter would have to go buy a $50,000 tract of land when mama has a piece of land sitting there. So we have a real complex issue of allowing family exemptions or taking certain things in consideration, because the world is changing. Yeah, it may have started out with 5 acres, may have started out with 10 acres, but if you got 2, 3 kids, you don't want them to go out and get a mortgage to start up in debt when daddy or mama got land that they can put something on, establish a new property line and let them build it. So we definitely need to take those kind of things in consideration. And it's gonna forever be changing. 20 years from now, it may be, that 1 acre tract may be a half-acre tract, because them kids had kids. Them kids wanna give their kids another piece of land. We gotta be able to change and adapt with that, because we'll allow a builder to come in and put 200 houses on 100 acres. So we can't tell that family, no, you can't put 2 houses on 2 acres.
You know, I just want to piggyback off that conversation, though. I think that's where we're tasked in order to get AGC correct. You know, the goal is to get AGC correct, because we don't want to be driving people out of ag all right? As Tommy was talking about it, we want to have an ability for people to hang on to their ag property, but make it so it works. And I think that our task in front of us is to go back and be very focused on making ag work so people aren't driven to drive to another code here. So again, I think we have a task in front of us, and I think we all understand the value of it. So I think we just can make sure we need to be focused on that.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Rezoning action, consider second reading, case number 24-59, tax map number 56100000022 to rezone from RMX 20 to LI 1.47 acre parcel in District 2. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve with amendment to add deed restriction to restrict the property from having manufacturing, gas stations, car washes. Draft language will be provided before third reading.
Okay, so do I understand the motion to be a motion to approve with the condition of a deed restriction to be determined by the property owner?
What if you excluded everything but dredging?
I think that's going to have to be determined between here and there, but the condition is a deed restriction that's limited to
That's what you're
the
after,
use.
right?
That use are compatible.
Everything but dredging.
Some of the other uses in the LI are acceptable
Permissible.
if it happened. I mean, I can't imagine that we can just
One use.
restrict it down to one very specific use.
I'll explain why I said that when we get to discussion.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Do we have discussion?
Yeah, first of all, I think the deed requirement, I think, is essential to this, that it's restricting it clearly, to me, to one use here. And I think at the end of the day, these people are looking for one use. So I think by us doing that, I think that is the smart thing to do, and I think it's critical in this case. Yeah.
By leaving it open with a couple non-hard uses that aren't going to cause a problem in the community, it allows that in the event that something goes wrong, for whatever reason, we have economy crashes or whatever, and the property owner needs to sell it, we don't have to sit up here and go through a complete rezoning and all of this go around just so that he can get rid of it. Because if it's only for a dredging company and only for that specific use, then he's stuck with it. And, I mean, trying to find a buyer for that may be next to impossible, and you might as well taking all his land from him at that point. So I would, there are a whole lot of uses that I don't think are compatible with this area, but there are a few that wouldn't be cause for concern.
How many would you say would not be a cause for concern? How many different industries? Would it be easier to list the ones that you think should be approved versus what should be approved?
If I can interject here, instead of council kind of batting questions back and forth, I think if we would allow council to make their comments and address their questions globally, I think that'll help streamline our discussion if that helps. I mean, I think in terms of if your question is,
He's making the motion.
what are
is
the
why I'm
light
asking him the
industrial?
question.
Yeah, but I think the motion is to approve the use with the restriction that it be to dredging and whatever is compatible with that, to give the owner the opportunity to present the deed restriction before council for approval. I don't know that he's in a position, I mean, Andy, I think, I'm just trying to streamline our conversation. If there's a question of staff about what are the light industrial uses that aren't compatible, that might be a better, I just don't want us to get into devolving, asking each council member questions, and calling each other out and come out on those things.
I guess as part of the clarification, it would be whichever one's shorter. If the list of acceptable uses is shorter than the list of exclusions,
That's
then
what I
we'll
was
use the
after.
shortest one so we don't have a 10-page deed restriction on just that, listing a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, I'll go next, and I'll just say, I don't have a problem supporting the dredging, because we've heard from so many residents come in and say, hey, we need this for our properties. You know, it's not like we're about to drop a liquor store in the middle of these houses. This is a service that's going to be provided for the residents, for their properties, specifically for their properties at this time. And I can live with waiting for those excluded uses to come before we approve third reading. May not have them all in 2 weeks, but this is gonna provide some relief to the property owners who are saying, hey, we're sinking over here. Throw us a lifeline. We need this service. Nobody else can come in from the outside and get to us to do it. I would hate to live on the lake, couldn't put my boat in the lake.
Okay.
That means your property's not worth what it's supposed to be worth, that you paid for 10, 20, 30, how many ever years. We talk about protecting the lake. Well, let's help the people that live on the lake stay on the lake. Because if they can't enjoy it, why pay for it? So if this wasn't a service specifically for that area, I would say no. But I've heard enough, I've gotten the emails, people showing up saying, hey, we need help over here. And if we can help them, and if it's their community, if they were here saying no, I'll be saying no. But they're here saying, yes, we need this, we need this. It's like having a cure for something and not giving it to somebody. Knowing that one-time dredging is not gonna solve it. It's like painting a house. Once you paint a house one time, you know, eventually you're gonna have to paint it again, or the paint's gonna fall off the wall. Same situation. I'm here to give these neighbors in that area a relief. But now, don't come back and say we want a liquor store next door. I'll say no to that one. But it's for the service for the property, so I can live with that one.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to hear from Jonathan why the Planning Department and the Planning Commission denied it.
Mr. Bono?
Yeah, so the recommendation from both staff and the planning commission was to deny, and that's based on the comprehensive plan. The future land use map shows this area designated as neighborhood residential, and certainly the light industrial district is not aligned with that future land use designation.
Okay, and then I have another question. And, well, I have a two-part question. First of all, the dredging, which I definitely would want to dredge if I lived on the lake, is there a reason why other companies, they haven't been, these people have not gone to another company to get their land dredged? Or even this gentleman who already, I think, has a dredging company, why they didn't go ahead and contract with him to get their land dredged?
I don't know about the individual contract offers or what has been sought or hasn't been sought from individual property owners around the lake. There are a number of businesses that have a license to operate. It's a sub-license, marine construction, that's granted by South Carolina LLR. So they're basically general contractors that can do construction in water. And certainly dredging is a part of that. So there are a number of businesses, I think there are 7 in York County that hold that license, including the applicant. I couldn't speculate as to how other properties might have approached those businesses, including Mr. Flowers.
And do you know if he is renting the land or if he's going to buy the land? What?
I believe he intends to purchase the land.
Okay, that's good. And then I think that he also has a business with other things like he builds decks or something like that.
Yeah, that's
Is
all, that all falls under that marine construction
Okay.
license. So, yeah, they can do the dredging, the pile driving, the decks, yep, docks, yep.
Any other discussion?
I'll stick to what I originally said. You either going to dredge it or it's going to become a mud hole.
I support second reading. I think that there's a good bit of work to do to come up with the deed restriction, but I think that information will come before council prior to third reading, and we have 3 readings before anything is approved. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 7-0. All right. We move to item number 5, rezoning action, consider second reading, case number 24-61, tax map number 713-00000143 through 216, to rezone from RSF 40 to RMX 10, 2 parcels that total .71 acres in District 7. Do we have a new motion?
I think that we're going to make a motion to defer this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to defer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to item number 6, rezoning action, consider second reading, case number 24-62, to rezone 48 parcels to 1 zoning district in order to remove their existing split zone status. This is in District 3. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Tom, you said there was such enthusiasm.
This has been aggravating. I still find it unbelievable it had to come to this, and I really don't know what we accomplished with this, and I really question if it should all been AGC, just AGC, but ain't no backing up now.
So, yeah, so I do have one, I think that there was some concern on our last meeting about the letter that was sent out and the understanding by the public to that letter, and I know there were some examples that you brought in there. Do we feel like we've answered the questions, and do we have, is there additional information that we need to really be corresponding with each of these landowners?
And real quick, before Jonathan answers that, I do want to thank staff for going above and beyond. They have gone out and they've knocked on doors and they've done as much as they can to get a hold of people. I think what you saw in that letter was the typical letter that we send during all of these. So that is a form letter, and staff, Jonathan can share about the number of people that reached out with questions. They talked to folks after the meeting as well. And I think they have engaged with other people since that last meeting, but I do thank staff for going out and knocking on doors. With that, I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, can I make one comment, though? And I know it's typical that we send these letters out, but I think when we have something like this, I just want to continue to refine our ability to communicate with the public on these types of issues. I think this was an example of where we can improve our communication, at least from what I'm seeing. And I think any option that we have to better communicate when you have these situations, the best. So again, go ahead, John.
Sure. There are 24 owners on Sandifer that live on Sandifer. So we knocked on all of those doors. 21 of the 24, 3 were behind locked gates, and there was one that was burned down. So of the 21 homes that we knocked on doors, the doors answered 17 times. And all of the property owners had discussion with our staff members. A lot of them did have questions. They all acknowledged they had received the certified letter. Our staff members were prepared with additional information, answered all the questions, and all the folks that we spoke to, no one wanted a different district or wanted to withdraw themselves from the process.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I have a question.
Clonder.
Of Jonathan.
You might just need to stay up there a minute.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Did you, this just for knowledge, is it the little postcard that you mailed them, or was it like a full letter?
Yes, it's
It
a
was a
full,
full
yeah,
letter.
a full certified letter. So there's 2 different types of notice. So when the council or planning commission does county initiated rezoning, we send the certified letter to the individual property owners that are affected by the rezoning action. The little placard that gets sent out, the little postcard, that is, it's a buffer, so a certain number of folks or a certain distance from a rezoning, whether or not they're included in that rezoning action, are notified that, hey, this is in your area, this is when the meeting is, this is when you can show up and talk about it.
Okay. For future reference, I'd like to bring that up, that we may want to make that postcard larger, because it does get lost in the mail. We got one. Okay, and then the signs, were they posted?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the signs generally are put in an area where you can't read that sign. And like then, if you go and you park and try to walk back to read the sign, there's nowhere to park to go back to read the sign. So that's just a suggestion that I have, is to maybe make, when, especially in this situation where there is a lot going on, to make that sign larger and more readable from the road, going 55 miles an hour.
Good feedback, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So what brought this to our attention was an individual who owned property next to his sister, I think it was another family member, and they both owned property. All of that property was split zoned. And all that they wanted to do was to take a few acres, take it from her and give it to him. So everything would have remained the same. To me, a different way that we could have ended up with the same result is to change the ordinance that deals with split zone property and being so regimented about how we address that, because there are split zone properties that exist throughout the county. This one is the one that has become highlighted. My concern was, in this particular case, what we did is, instead of doing that, we just rezoned the parcels. And so what I asked, and I did get an email back from staff, but I did want to know how many parcels are rendered non-conforming as a result of this action.
I don't have a copy of that email, so if whatever the number was that I sent to you.
I don't have it either. Do you not?
Are you referring to the follow-up report I sent Friday?
Correct. All I'm trying to
just
do
want
is
us
to
to read
make
that out?
that public so that folks know when we make a decision on
We can
this.
pull that up in a sec.
Sure.
We can have to look
So
at it.
I think one of the issues is finding out how many parcels are rendered non-conforming as a result of this. And then, as I understand it, there've only been maybe 5 property owners that we've been able to actually communicate with directly.
No, so originally we had about that number that reached out, called, and spoke to some of the folks here in the parking lot at the last meeting. And since that time, staff has gone out and knocked on doors on Sandifer and had discussions one-on-one, face-to-face.
I guess maybe my question would be answered more easily this way. The way I understood it is that this solution of basically eliminating the split zoning, is that going to put, my understanding that result was brought up in order to accomplish what that split zoning actually did. So these parcel owners are essentially ending up the same place that they were previously. Is that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
My understanding was that one of the reasons why the parcels were split zoned to begin with was to ensure certain development approach
Right.
for
so-
that road.
Right, so that there would not be, from the historical conversation that we've had, or from the history that we got from Mr. Sandifer, is that the split zoning approach, when zoning was first applied, was to have no manufactured homes up on Sandifer Road. So that's why there's a 300-foot district from the center line of Sandifer where the different zoning district was applied that would not allow manufactured homes.
So is the zoning that staff has referred that it go to, does that still accomplish the goal that was originally done by the property owners?
Yes, AGC 1
Okay.
does exactly that.
The question that I have with respect to the nonconforming uses, so assuming that we do have nonconforming uses, have we been able to speak with the specific owners of the nonconforming uses?
Yes, so the nonconformities were discussed, and as with any nonconformity, and including nonconforming uses of agricultural uses on the RSF 40 portions of Sandifer, those are nonconforming today because there's no agriculture that's allowed in that district. So the inverse happens there. So there's some hog pits and agricultural structures that wouldn't be allowed. They're currently nonconforming, and so this rezoning to AGC 1 corrects those. So that's the inverse there. So all of the grandfathering that happens with nonconformities allows all of those existing structures that are going to become nonconforming now with this action are allowed to remain in perpetuity.
So that, you're telling me that by doing this, we actually bring some folks in conformity of use. My question, though, is just to make sure, as we make this decision more broadly, how many folks are still in nonconformity once this is passed?
I don't have the exact number listed in the email, so what we'll have to do is get back to you on that. We
You don't
that in
have
front
your
of us.
staff report in front of you?
That was a follow-up question, and so we provided that and answered in an email. I don't have it in the original staff report, no. But we can certainly follow
We'll
up
get
with
that.
that number to you.
I think the concern that I'm hearing from folks up here is that what we don't want to do is to put people in a nonconforming use. And if they still have a nonconforming use, we want to fix it. And I can't tell if the people you talk to are the people in the nonconforming use. And so it seems like the targeted approach would probably be to address the nonconforming use folks that are still rendered nonconforming as a result of this. That's the concern, is that there are folks that are not paying attention. I'm sorry?
I have some good news for that also. We've been working with the Planning and Zoning Committee. Staff has identified nonconforming residential uses as a common problem that keeps coming up, whether people are applying to add a shed, add an addition, or looking to have to do a rezoning as a result of an existing nonconformity. So we've been working with the Planning and Zoning Committee to allow for non-conforming residential uses in particular to be able to expand. So that's the current problem, being non-conforming, is you can't expand a non-conforming use. And we've been working with that committee to bring forward an ordinance to the full council to allow people to have existing residences in particular expand when they are non-conforming. So that should help a lot of this situation. And
Well,
many
I think
others
that's
in
a
the county.
separate question that has to come up from council before. I think what we're concerned about, or at least what I'm concerned about, is I don't want someone who's coming to build a deck on the back of their mobile home to say, I didn't know anything about this, I didn't make contact, how can you just now make me non-conforming by action that's a false sweeping action? I think just making sure that we are at least aware of the folks that are now being rendered non-conforming, and that we're not causing them additional problems through this, but
We can have a list of what's currently non-conforming, what's still non-conforming, and what's
I want to
actually
know, all I
moving
want to
off of
know is what's
non-conforming.
non-conforming.
This
once
solves a
this
lot of
action
people's
takes
problems
it.
too.
That's all I want to know is how many are non-conforming once this action takes place? How many and who are the parcel
Well,
owners
we
that are
want to share,
non-conforming?
we want to share what we're solving as well, so we'll give you both.
I support second reading under those bits, but that's the reason why we requested that information. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Move now to new business. Council to approve a $20 million loan from the general fund to jumpstart Penny's 5 progress. The loan is to be paid back in 3 years or less. Do we have any comments from management or anyone before we move forward?
Similar to past pennies, our goal is to make sure we're being expeditious in getting resurfacing done. So this really is an opportunity to utilize a strong fund balance to make sure we're prioritizing resurfacings and getting that done right out of the gate.
I'll just say, I mean, one of the biggest successes we had, and one of the reasons why we do keep the reserve in place, is in order to do things like this. So I support this, and I think what the taxpayers were able to see a benefit from last time is when we had the resurfacing on that Pennies. It was the first time there was a resurfacing component. We were able to leverage the existing funding in order to move forward with those projects, and those projects were completed within 4 years of the vote, and under budget because of the use of being able to use those funds. So I do support this, and I think one of the comments that I heard from folks in the community with Pennies is let's make sure we get all of the projects done, start to finish, within the next 7 years. And I think that's the goal that we're gonna be using as kind of a guidepost for our transportation meetings, and making sure that we keep track of that. But I certainly support this. Are there any other comments from council?
Yeah, Kim was over there waving a red flag for something. No, I'm just kidding. We actually saved some money by doing this because it allowed us to jumpstart, get the work done earlier before any of the price increase happened.
I think what they're asking for is a motion.
Oh.
Do we have a motion to
That's what
approve?
Kim was-
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second.
Oh, okay. We
Keep
did
going,
work on
Mr.
those.
Roddy.
Gosh, we're good, we're good. I think everybody understands what we got going on.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion.
Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Move now to item number 2, Council to consider approving Parks and Recreation additional personnel and capital expenditures related to the $1,256,582 approved in the fiscal year 25 Parks Administrative budget. Any comments from management before we?
Just
Have a
referring
motion.
council back to what we shared at the workshop, this is follow-up from the budget discussions last fiscal year where y'all added funding that could be utilized after the Parks Master Plan was done. This is the first implementation step of the Parks Master Plan from our Clemson consultants to make sure that we're funding our current parks that are currently open with enough employees that we're able to provide the level of service that's appropriate.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I was wondering why Catherine was still hanging around.
So, yeah, I do have one quick question. I know that there was a lot of exercise done, again, around surveying the public and, bringing back feedback and continual feedback. So when is our anticipated follow-up on that information, as we kind of put it all together and start making a decision on how we want to approach some of the feedback we've received for ideations?
Sure, in regards to the Parks Master Plan?
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
you're
and from the
referring to?
public, right.
Yeah, and if Catherine, if you want to do come up, our Parks Director, Catherine Jones, is here, I'll try to answer the question,
Sure.
and then she can fill in where I miss. In the Parks Master Plan, a big portion of that was a survey done by ETC, a survey, local government survey company, and there was a lot of feedback they provided. So that report, with all that feedback, is now in the hands of staff as they prepare for the committee who's going to meet to talk about that second phase of the Parks Master Plan implementation. So I think the HEP committee, Health, Environmental, and Protection Committee, is meeting next week. And that survey is part of that discussion when you think about what do we need to be considering for the current land we own that's not currently open or accessible, as well as what are the future types of parks or ideas that residents are interested in. So that's how we would use the survey, but I would hand it off to you, Catherine. with
Yeah,
that.
no, I mean, you spoke perfectly in regards to that. So the plan would be to bring those recommendations and us to have that discussion at the committee level and come up with plans for moving forward.
That's awesome. We're getting close, so that's
Yes,
great.
we are.
Yeah.
We're making
great.
strides.
There you go. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Committee and other reports, I believe we had finance and
Finance and
operations.
operations, yeah. Tonight, Finance and Operations, Matt present was Councilmember Atkins and Councilmember Rodney, I myself. We did discuss several items tonight, and there were several different approvals. The first one was for a discussion around Planning Commission and for District 4, recommendation consideration of Derek Williams. There was a deferral put on that one, so we will defer that to our next upcoming meeting. Board of Zoning Appeals, there was a recommendation for consideration of Anthony Mickles, and that also was deferred. This is for District 4. So we will move on to Rock Hill, York County Convention and Visitor Bureau. There was an approval in District 1 for India Esquiva. For District 1, there was an approval for District 3 for Porter Gable. There was also an approval for District 6 for David Angel for a second term. There was, in regards to at-large seat, there was a denial in regards to a recommendation for Brian Jones for a first term. In regards to an at-large seat, there was a recommendation for Shaw Maple for a second term that was approved. There was a recommendation for consideration for a second term for Natalie Hosta, and she was approved. And then we had two more recommendations for approval, and there was an approval from at-large under Herod Hutchinson for approval, and that was an at-large seat. And also Lamar Thompson for an at-large seat also was approved. York County Forever, we did a recommendation for approval of Don Posey for District 1, And also recommendation for approval of Jennifer McAdams for District, well, actually, it's a vacant seat for an ex officio for that position, and that was approved. Lastly, we did committee approval of allocations of fund for District 3 from Area 11, Special Olympics for the amount of $2,000. We did a recommendation of allocation for District 3 for Bethany Fire Department for amount of $1,500. We did allocation for approval for District 5 of Carson Passion Project for an amount of $2,500. We also allocated funds for approval for District 5 for Area 11 Special Olympics for an amount of $1,500. There was approval of minutes. And lastly, we did a discussion around local vendor preference. And we are looking at additional information based on surveys out to contractors, looking at whether municipalities and other counties do. It has been, again, referred to our next meeting, and we'll be doing some additional research around that. And then also, we did have a finance update as part of our meeting. So that is it.
Thank you, Mr. Audette.
You
We
got
do
it.
not have any citizen concerns tonight. We do have about 4 items in executive session, but before that, we have council member new non-agenda comments. Are there any comments?
Yeah, since we were so tired at the last meeting, I didn't say anything, so I got it all built up in me. Now, I'm just gonna say, I'm excited to be serving with Tom and Tommy on the F&O.
Yeah.
Look forward to that. And look forward to, I know we had the sheriff here earlier, the outgoing sheriff and the incoming sheriff. Look forward to working with Sheriff Breeden on some things. And one of the things that did come up in our F&O meeting was about vacancies. And so hopefully we can get around to helping our sheriff department fill those vacancies, because we budget for them, we need them, and we want to fill those positions. So look forward to seeing what all we can do as a council, not just up here, but publicly, to help him recruit some more good men and women to come on board and serve our community.
Absolutely. So I do want to take this time also to publicly thank Sheriff Tolson for the work he's done. I think that he tirelessly protected the people of York County, and what he did was amazing. And from different initiatives, one called March Madness, again, another one called Diamondback, which he put out, and he brought forth the sheriff's office in order to go after different crime items that are impacting the county. And there was many different things that were done, a lot of busts, a lot of drug busts, a lot of et cetera, that really helped this county out. Again, Kevin was very accessible. He went after many different things that protected the public, and he was excellent to work with. And again, I applaud him for his work and what he's done for the county. I also want to welcome Sheriff Breeden. I think Sheriff Breeden will do an amazing job. We're excited to have Sheriff on board, so thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Do we have a motion for it? Was that a,
I have a comment.
okay.
The roads are covered in Fort Mill.
All
Deb,
right.
you better get
We better move it along.
There you go.
Well,
We actually get some snow.
There you
I've
go.
been summoned home.
I was gonna say we need to allocate enough money to run a smokestack right up the center of this dadgum building and put a wood stove right there. Cause I'm tired of that cold air blowing out
There
on
you
me
go.
right there.
There you go.
Do we have?
Or go tell little
Yeah.
Fred up yonder to
Yes,
turn the
we do.
heat up on the.
Yeah, you know, we're asking for progress. Do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, we do have a few motions. Receive a legal advice, request authorization, condemnation required project number 1722A-011, Flint Hill Street Drainage Improvement, track number 7, 2224, 5672, and 109. Receive a legal advice, contractual matter for interstate construction. Again, another motion for receipt of legal advice, downtown TIF, and another one, receipt of legal advice, outside counsel.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are moving straight into executive session.
I'd actually take the flag spread.
We are out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have any motions?
Yes, we do have one motion. Motion to authorize condemnation regarding project number 17228-011, Flint Street drainage improvement for track 7, 22, 24, 56, 72, and 109.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.